Loraine Buchheit was born on September 13, 1917 in Old Appleton, Missouri, in her home. She is the daughter of Louis and Louise Wibbenmeyer. Loraine shared her home with 6 brothers and 5 sisters. At home, Loraine and her sister Frida would bake various goods for her family. One time they baked too many chocolate pies and Loraine became ill from eating too many. She hasn't eaten chocolate pie since then. Every day for school, Loraine and her siblings would walk all the way from Old Appleton down to St. Joseph's in Apple Creek, which is about an hour's walk, as Loraine recalls. Loraine attended school until she graduated the 8th grade. For fun, mostly the girls would play with their homemade dolls while the boys would run around outside and play ball. Sometimes they would all get together and play Parcheesi. With 14 people living in one house, sometimes things would get hectic, but Louis always found ways to support his family.
He made home brew and sold it. And that's part of how we made a living, part of it. And people, men, they would come to the house every night. And Saturdays and Sundays it was women. And my sister Paula and I, we helped him. And we carried the beer bottles up from the basement, out of the ice in the basement. We brought them up for him to serve to his people. How do you think that was an interesting thing? That's what we did. My sister and I, Paul, that was younger. Yeah, and he would call us out, "Do you come and help me?" And we'd help him. Usually on Saturday night and Sunday night, we would help him. That was part of our living. And I guess it was really about a pretty big part of it.
Loraine's father also loved music. He played the cello in his band and would also play at local dances. When Loraine was 6, she had to have her appendix removed. She also had to deal with death at an early age.
I had a little sister Dorothy. She was 4 years old, and she had scarlet fever. She was the prettiest one in the family. And she died when she was 4. She was in the hospital, and Grandma was with her all the time. And one time I was down there, and it was contagious, They wouldn't let anybody near anybody, just Grandma. And then we'd go up to the door, the door to the room, and we'd listen and we'd see what we could hear. And one time I was there and I heard, I think one of the sisters came in the room, and I heard her say, "Sister, don't you think she's dying?" And the sister said, "Yes, I think so." And of course she died shortly after that.
Lorraine's first official job was at a hospital. She wasn't a nurse or anything like that, but instead she worked in the kitchen at St. Francis, where she would prepare the food trays for the patients. Loraine grew up with and eventually married Leander Lee Buchheit, who owned the Old Appleton Mercantile Company. They would go and see movies out in Perryville, but would normally go to various dances when they were out on dates. Loraine and Leander eventually married on November 25, 1937. After they were married, they moved into their one and only house in April of 1938. Loraine would help out down at the mercantile store selling chicken eggs to be sold to Mississippi for raising there. Not being able to have children of their own, Loraine and Leander decided to adopt Kenneth and Eileen.
Well, we wanted some children, but for some reason, we couldn't have any of our own. So, we went to, I guess, a doctor or to a priest or somewhere, and they told us, well, you can adopt some, and that's what we did.
Her family would go on various vacations annually to attend postmaster conventions that were at various places each year. Once they went to Las Vegas, several times to California, and other places. More recently, Loraine and Leander visited Mexico and Jerusalem. When asked if Loraine would change anything in her life or do anything differently, she said she wouldn't change a thing. Loraine also had to deal with the depression.
Well, it wasn't very much different for us because our family had depression all the time. You know what I mean? We never had anything special to eat except like Thanksgiving.
Loraine also notes how the women's role in society has changed throughout her lifetime.
It has changed, yes. Women do just about everything now what men do. And in those days, well, we just didn't get to do very much.
Loraine believes that raising children has changed much over the years.
Well, I would think it's harder because children nowadays just get around more than we did, and they expect more than we ever had.
Leander and Loraine were happily married for almost 65 years when Leander passed away. Now Loraine still lives in the same house that she and Leander lived in. To pass the time in the day, she reads up on her news in the newspapers and watches the news on television. Also, every day in the afternoon, she has to catch her soap operas.